why succession planning matters, common pitfalls, impact of firm size, the baby boomer wave, timing, hands-on handover strategy, cohort laddering model, choosing the right successor, overcoming barriers, and action steps. So it is now my pleasure to introduce the panel for today. We are joined by Heather. She is acknowledged as one of the world's leading authorities on legal market strategy and management of legal services. Since 1998, she has advised leaders of premier law firms and legal service providers, global to solo, big law to new law, on innovative growth strategies pertaining to business, markets, management, and clients. The result is creation of new value and accelerated performance achieved through a distinctive one-on-one legal market position and sustained competitive advantage, leading to greater market share, revenue, and profits. Thanks again, Heather, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We are also joined by Michaela. She is the National Director and Head of the Vancouver office of Life After Law, a national recruitment firm dedicated to placing legal professionals in private practice, corporate counsel, quasi-legal, and executive roles. Michaela has her BA in psychology from McGill University and her law degree from Osgoode Hall Law School in Toronto. She is called to the bars in Ontario and New York. Michaela has been in legal recruitment for the past 19 years after leaving the practice of law. She boasts a wide Canadian and international network and has a diverse range of clients in a variety of industries, including real estate, finance, insurance, and emergent companies and crown corporations. Thank you, Michaela, as well, for joining us today. And I will now hand things over to Russell to get started with the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Daphne. That was a very kind introduction throughout the day and right now. So let's see what our first poll says in terms of results. Most of them, 85% lawyers, other professionals are with us today. You can throw that in the chat box. But why succession planning matters. Heather, you want to take a kick at this? First of all, what are we talking about, and why should we be talking about it more?
Well, this area is becoming a bigger part of my practice all the time. And I think, Russell, it's because succession is going to be impacted over the next decade as the boomers start aging out. That is going to be a big part of it. The boomers, the youngest of whom were born in 1964. So they are aging into their 60s now. And so there's going to be a retirement of the senior lawyers and a bumper crop of associates coming up behind them. And these folks have new styles and different working styles. So we've got to take this into context as we look to succession, because nobody lasts forever. And we want to keep refreshing the firm. Because that's the only way you stay in business. So as the baby boomers shift out, whether it's willingly or not, the upcoming ranks are looking at things differently and have different expectations, but their clients are going to be looking for the same results: speed, timing, cost, all of that. So we've got to be cognizant of it.
In common pitfalls, what should we be looking out for?
Sorry, who is that question addressed to?
You want to take it, Heather? Just common pitfalls? What should we be
the common pitfalls. Well, golly, there's so many. We could be here until next week. But among the common pitfalls, and Michaela, you're going to have insight to this too. There is fear. There's a lot of fear. It's something that people don't want to face for, I guess, the same reason that many people don't want to do a will. There is a fear of the end. And Russell, you deal with this all the time when it comes to an end of a marriage, or the end of a relationship, or the end of a job, or the end of a career. The ends are frightening because people aren't sure what comes next. And that fear of what comes next can really cause folks to lock up. It can cause them to become territorial. It can cause them to be angry. a whole plethora of emotions bubble up to the surface, and need to be dealt with, and can be dealt with, provided they're dealt with a long time horizon and great attention to sensitivity.
Shoemaker's kid, right? You hear about these lawyers, they don't even have wills or power of attorney in place. And
Right.
it's just one of those things I could put aside. Michaela, you want to jump in here in terms of why it matters now and some pitfalls you're seeing?
Yeah, I think, what Heather touched on is that definitely the fear and not wanting to look at it. But it's also, I can imagine it happens with a prenuptial agreement. You don't want to think about it. You don't want to plan for that. It's sort of, you want to service your clients and get what needs to be done. And at the end of the day, if you're not billing, why am I going to waste my time when I could be charging this for this many hours, thinking about the next step? So it's like, I'm going to do it on a rainy day. I'm going to save it for a rainy day. And you never get there. And then that bus comes and knocks out proverbially a person and you're left with nothing. So I think that's also a big thing that we're seeing. It's just, I'm too busy. This isn't a priority. Things are going well, and suddenly they're not going well. And that's why we're just trying to take that step back before you get to that stage.
This career is like a black hole, right? It'll suck as much of your soul as you're willing to put into it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we get so busy putting out client fires
yeah.
and urgent matters that we don't really take the time to make sure our practices are safeguarded, our families are safeguarded, that the legacy can continue. So really insightful. I want to thank our audience, first of all, for being here today and online through YouTube, participating in the polls throughout the day. Your feedback and questions have been fantastic. We really appreciate all the effort. So one of the poll questions that just came up, what size firm are you part of? 81%, less than 10%, right? And these are the ones usually that are, some of these lawyers are doing the bookkeeping, the marketing, trying to comply with the Law Society regulations and service our clients at the same time. Really, there's just no time left at the end of the day to be thinking about succession planning. 10 to 30% small to mid-sized firm. That would be a large firm if you're a family-only firm, 14%. And then more than 30, so 8%. Some large firms too, which if you're a full service firm, you could just flip it over to one of your departments and have them structure something for you. So there's really no excuse there. But impact of firm size, we know what our audience is comprised of today. Michaela, what do you think? Does this affect succession planning?
It really does. And that's really helpful to know sort of the breakdown. And those are the three sizes I'll talk about. We'll talk about quickly the sole practitioner or small firm, medium firm, which tends to be the regional firms, and then we've got the larger global national firms. But succession planning is imperative to all. What we really see is that there's sort of the three categories. The small firms, the solo firms, what happens is uh, not just a lack of continuity, but they could be closed up overnight. So succession
Yeah.
planning is imperative to the survival of the firm. When we get into the regional firms, it's not about survival anymore, it's more sustainability. And then when we get to the larger firms, succession planning comes into play, not again about survival or sustainability, but continuity. Um, but again, I'll give you examples where we've seen big firms and regional firms collapse. But the size of the firm has a huge impact. Sole practitioners, they really are tied to the business itself. It's not the firm or the brand typically. So the relationship between the client and the lawyer is different, which makes it so much more impactful and necessary to have the succession plan in place. You can't just rely on to the person down the hall or the associate coming up the ranks. And like we mentioned before about getting hit by a bus, but like there's sort of the retirees. What if I just don't want to do this anymore? Or what if somebody becomes ill or gets in an accident and you're the person behind the firm, or one partner leaves. If there's a two-partner shop, can the other partner sustain the whole practice? Are they even in the same sort of, one could be a litigator, one could be corporate, so do they have the same practice areas? And the other thing is associate attrition. Again, we see that more at the bigger firms. But with a small firm, if you don't succession plan, you just may not have a firm the next day and you may not be able to service the clients. With the regional firms, you mentioned that, it's easier. It's not as imperative. It's more about sustainability. How can we continue to service our clients? Um, and as opposed to the survival. But there's a few factors that have to be taken into consideration, like client transition, talent pipeline. Do we have people coming up the ranks? Do we have them in the right practice area? Ownership structure. So you really need to delineate clearly the partnership structures. There's things to consider: capital buy-ins and buyouts. They're complex. These things, you can't just wake up one morning and expect it to be all taken care of. The larger firms, again, like you had mentioned, Russell, they are a bit more sheltered because they tend to have institutional clients. They have policies and protocols that are in place. They have teams often that, make sure there's enough summer students and then enough associates, or if there isn't enough associates, they hire laterally. They have those things in place. But again, I think it's false to say that it's just the smaller firms that are at risk. And we've seen the collapse of Goodman and Carr. That was, pulled the rug right under people. The Heenan and Blakey, same thing. It collapsed overnight too. It wasn't. There was things that led up to it, but it all comes down to poor succession planning. So the fallout can be, much more impactful on the smaller firms, but we are seeing it at the mid to large firms also. But again, just to recap, I think what's most important is to recognize succession planning in a small firm is instrumental for survival. The mid-level firm, it's instrumental for sustainability. And then at the large, more international global firms, it's more the transition, legacy, next step. So it's not as much as, oh my God, we're going to fold overnight, but what are the next steps? So they kind of each have their own sort of, what's the word, Heather? Like subtle
Their unique
nuances.
situation, every last one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their own blind
planning.
They've got their own blind spots, right? They're just in different
do.
spots. Yeah.
They do. And
Heather,
just, sorry, Russell, carry
I
on.
was just going to say, you want to jump in on firm size and what you're seeing at your end?
Yeah, I agree with what Michelle is saying, but there's another way to look at it too, is that the big firms do not have it going on. Do not get the wild idea, please, that they really know what they are doing. It's a different animal entirely. There is territoriality that comes into play. The competition gets fierce. There is also something else that I want to bring up, and it is something that is very much on my radar, and I'm going to be writing about it shortly, called the pyramid rollover, and that is about what is going to happen with firms of all sizes, from the small to the large, about what's going to happen when the twin juggernauts of AI and pricing come into full effect, and it's going to wipe out the bottom of the traditional law firm pyramid. And when that happens, the pyramid, which is kind of like an iceberg supported by a big bottom under the water that you can't see, what's going to happen is the bottom of that pyramid, with the younger associates, all the junior talent, some of those associates who have been doing the rote work as part of their training, and I use the word loosely, are going to be
their 100-hour week training
yeah,
sessions?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. The rote work. Yeah. They are going to be displaced. AI and pricing are going to displace people. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's the ugly truth. And when that happens, you are going to see these traditional firms have the bottom wiped off them, part of their supporting structure under the water, if they were an iceberg, wiped out from under them, and they are going to roll, and they're going to pitch right over. And there are going to be mergers like crazy. Watch for this. And this is all going to impact what's going to happen with succession. So firms need to get on that regardless of size. It is going to happen. And this is something that is a big concern. And it's going to be a huge, it's going to be a sea change when it happens, and it's going to happen gradually and then suddenly.
What do you think will happen at the top then, right? The bottom of the iceberg's wiped out.
At the top, well, that pyramid is going to get shorter, and there's going to be fewer people on the top holding the financial reins, because I think a lot of the seniors are going to go, holy cow, I think I've got to get out of here. And they are going to depart as fast as they can. And they're going to leave the middle, the people who are used to managing up and having support underneath are going to be in the middle. That's where things are going to get interesting. I don't have all the solutions to this. I wish I did, but I don't. But I am watching, and this is what I'm seeing coming.
We can spend a whole session just talking about this. You know, we had the remote transition after COVID. Lots of people don't want to go to the bigger centers, bigger firms. They want to work from their cottage or their boat or the beach somewhere.
Mhm.
And you're right. You know, we're starting to see the old system starting to teeter a little bit, and AI is a complete unknown. I just I love this story, but it's a little bit off topic. Just think of Yellow Pages 20 years ago.
Mhm.
That's how lawyers got their work. And
Mhm.
they could have bought Google. They didn't. Google wiped them out within 2 years. And so these seed changes can happen. Well, or just think of Uber and what it did to the taxi industry. So it can come a lot quicker than you think.
Yeah.
But this is a nice
And
tie into what we want to talk about next: the urgency of the baby boomer wave. This is, this is the age group, Heather, that you're looking at, right?
Yeah. Well,
The top of the pyramid.
yeah, the top of the pyramid and the bottom of the pyramid, Russell. That's
Right.
what I'm keeping my eye on. The middle ground is gonna move up or move down. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen there, but the top and the bottom are really concerning. And I'm just going to give you some numbers so that you understand what the context is for this. In 2023, the American Bar Association found that nearly 14% of all lawyers in the US, and Canada will be similar because we follow along, but 14% of all lawyers in the US are 65 years of age or older. And that is in stark contrast to about 7% of all US workers who are 65% or 65 years old or older. So that means lawyers are sticking around for a long time, probably staying a little too long at the fair. And in addition to that, the American and Canadian Bar Association said that 30% to 40% of lawyers in private practice are beginning to retire or considering winding down. But those findings also indicate that most law firms have actively practicing lawyers in their 60s and 70s, and many of them are rainmakers, and their partners age 60 or older control at least one half of the firm's revenue in 63% of those firms. So
So
that's what I was
Heather,
talking about, the people
Heather,
holding onto the purse strings.
Heather, Michaela, we're getting some feedback from our audience. Remember, 81%, 10 lawyers or less. So
Right.
do you apply the same pyramid
Yes.
theory to the smaller ones, or
Yes.
how do we treat the 80% of the audience that we're seeing or watching us online right now?
It's going to be impactful for everybody regardless of size, because regardless of size, clients are going to expect that you have adopted AI into your practice. There's going to be questions if you don't. There are also going to be, because pricing is the flip side to the AI coin, there's also going to be an expectation that you A, are using AI, and B, you are charging accordingly. So it's not going to really matter the size of the firm. It's going to matter about how you approach your clients. And it's not going to matter whether you are a soloist or whether you are a partner of an international firm.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this on the fly. The impact might even be bigger. If you've got a smaller firm with one or two senior lawyers
Mhm.
and they're gone, there's their network, there's your clients coming in. You could see how it would even go quicker, I would imagine.
Well, that's why watch for mergers. Watch for
Yeah.
mergers. It's going to
we're
happen
already seeing
because
that.
this is going to catch people unawares, which is why we're trying to talk about it now.
Well, we are
Yeah,
we're not trying, we are. So
absolutely.
Michaela, what's your
Yeah.
take on all this in terms of small firms, 10 lawyers or less? What should they be thinking about in terms of what we're talking about?
Well, yes, this is huge. What we see, there's sort of four types of kind of exit strategies for, succession planning at the smaller firm. It's A, the sale of the firm. So you either identify another firm and to buy the practice or the firm itself. We see the wind down when they just were done. I want to close up shop. I'm out of here. The successor model, someone whether they're internal to the firm or external to take over. And then what Heather was saying is the merger. And, that tends to happen more at the small, medium, and large size firm level. Um, in terms of
Let,
succession plan, oh yeah.
let's talk about timing. What kind of time frame are you seeing? Are we talking overnight, 3 years, 5 years out? What are you seeing, Michaela,
What's
in terms of
crazy,
timing?
3 years minimum. I have firms that are now just looking at succession planning, like the actual putting the wheels in motion, that I touched base with 4 years ago to just say, have you thought about this? You're a sole practitioner, you're in your late 40s. What's your next step? And they took a year and a half to even wrap their head around the fact that, oh God, like, yeah, what am I
I
doing?
may
And
not be
then,
here anymore. Yeah, what's going
right?
on?
Like
Yeah,
literally, what if you're ill? What if you like there goes your revenue? What are you going to do with your clients? How are you going to keep this going? The legacy that, or even, your lifestyle. So just even in terms of getting them on board mentally, I think that's the first step. Then it's, Heather and I will talk about action steps to really implement a
mhm,
succession plan. That's almost the easy part. I find it's the barrier of like, let's talk about this, let's think about it, let's face it, you know, head on, and then figure out how we do it. So like 3 years minimum, especially for a small firm. And the other thing is like sale of a firm. It is so hard to identify a firm that not only aligns in, well, it doesn't always have to align in practice area. You could have a, great real estate firm team up with a litigation firm, but the values have to be there. It has to be a
yeah.
similar culture. Little things. What if one person's billing at 500 and you're billing at 300? That could collapse it in and of itself. The other thing that collapses these mergers, even after you've gone through the hoops of identifying the firm that wants to a sale or a merger, is conflicts. What if you're completely conflicted out? So there's so many little things that you have to think about. So like in terms of sale of a firm and a merger, it's not just you anymore. You're dealing with another, you've got to identify another target that wants the same things that you do. The wind down is obviously easier and more seamless in terms of a succession plan, but then you really have to be careful of the law society. Like their interest is to protect the client. And we've seen a lot of them go awry if you're not in complete compliance. There's trust accounts that have to be closed up or
Mhm.
transferred, or so that's where that comes in. So that tends to be the most seamless one. And then second is finding a successor. In the big firms, that's easy. You should usually have people coming up the ranks. Um, you also have to make sure you have a really strong pipeline of talent, and that's you're being poached from other places. And attrition, we see attrition or burnout at the 3 to 5 year level. And then when you get into the sale of the firm or the merger, that's just a whole other ball game. And if you don't start 3 years behind, it's just not going to be feasible.
There's a
So
lot to
pull
unpack
3 years
there.
ahead. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, you're right. Associates may go out and just start a competing firm. I've had that happen several times. Conflicts. If you're in a regional or a smaller community and there's a handful of family lawyers in that community, you're going to be conflicted out of maybe half your files.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing you said, Michaela, that really resonated with me is core values. We've heard speakers earlier today talk about your why and empathy and warm relationships with clients in terms of understanding, um, having them understand what's important to you. A lot of firms don't have core values. Big companies do. They hire professional people to help think this through. So when you're merging these firms, their values may not line up. And I thought that was really insightful. But we're not thinking about it. We're worried about emotion we got to prepare for tomorrow morning. And the other thing that really resonated, Michaela, is, lawyers in my vintage, I know one or two, they started planning 8 years ahead of time, the succession plan. So, 1 to 3 years could be quick if you can get the lawyer to move that quickly. Um, so what about hand-on, handover strategy? What are we looking at here? What do we need to know, Michaela?
Well, it's what's interesting is we see it throughout, no matter what the firm is, that the most successful, the most seamless transitions is a hands-on handover strategy. The larger firms, they can get away with the exit memos and sort of a bit more hands-off approach, but it doesn't always resonate with the clients. If the client hasn't been integrated with the new person, whether it's a senior partner, junior partner that's worked with a senior or a senior associate, you can't just show up one day and say, here's the file. Like these are, even if it's an institutional client, they really have deep, especially if it's a rainmaker, they have these deep connections and deep loyalty. So whether you're in a small firm and handing off your clients, you're going to need like a 2-year runway sometimes to bring these successors on to the file, get them acclimated. And sometimes there just isn't a mesh. You just don't like the person, you
Mhm.
don't like the lawyer, you're just different people. So you know what happens. So you can't just say it's not like a business where you're selling widgets and you sell the whole thing and anyone can sell it and you hang up your
Are you
shingle. Like,
saying there's lawyers that don't like each other? That's not possible. Everybody
no
gets
way,
along so
never,
nicely,
right?
right?
And if you don't like their clients, that's the thing. Like it
Yeah,
just sometimes
we
they're just
all have a
not
little
that
black
fit.
book of somebody who's done them wrong for some reason. And yeah. Um,
Really.
so
So
is this sort of what we're seeing in other industries where a company will get bought they keep the CEO or the founder on board for a couple of years and pay them it's just sort of the handover that you're talking about, this transition?
exactly the same way. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
right. It's not usually that external, especially with the larger firms, it's more of an internal handover. But with the
right.
case of the merger, yeah, it could be an entirely new person who's never been on the file, and you can't, it's so personal, especially the small firms and family law. You might have divulged your deepest, darkest secrets over the past 5 years. Like that's a personal relationship that you can't just replace overnight. So it's a matter of bringing them in, integrating them into the files. So, and I think Heather will talk more about the actual strategy that's what's the one that the cohort laddering model. But again, what we see
Mhm.
throughout all is the most successful, whether you're in a small firm, medium size, or large firm, is a hands-on handover. It makes it seamless as to the extent possible.
I guess if you're handing it off to existing associates, that'll help reduce attrition as well. They've got some skin
100%.
in the game,
Yes.
right?
And with institutional clients where you're at a firm and you can't build a book, that's a really good way that they can really kind of clinch their spot at the firm without having to go out and business develop. It's, getting
All
in on
right,
those
so I'm
front.
learning lots of new stuff, even as we're talking right now. Cohort layering model. What are we talking about here? Heather, first of all, tell us what it is, what it means, and how is it going to help us?
Well, you know what, Russell, that's something that I hatched myself because people say to me, I have no idea what that is. I've never heard of it. And I think I may have hatched it my very own self, much to my own surprise.
I don't. I'm telling you, I don't know. I'll be the
Sounds
first
I
one
think I
fancy.
need
to
to get
admit
it
that. So
trademarked. Somebody help me with that.
that should have been a poll question.
Yeah.
What does this mean? Yeah.
Yeah, what does it mean? Well, you know what, just to circle back to what Michaela was saying, you have to have the client involved in this whole process. If you ignore the client in a succession planning process, it is at your peril because the client wants to be involved. I can tell you that from having interviewed many law firm clients, and they will say to me, when
You're not talking about the owner of the firm who's your client. You're talking about that lawyer's specific
client
clients, the divorce
asking the
cases he's handling,
question,
or
yeah, asking the question, when is my lawyer going to be retiring? I haven't heard. I need to know because I need to plan internally how I am going to deal with that. So even if the lawyer,
clients want to know, some clients want to know when the lawyer's going on mat leave. They can't wait,
absolutely.
And
Yes,
so
yes.
And
imagine
so
the
they
whole
should.
firm's going on a change of ownership. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so they should. So that's why I say you ignore your client's participation at your peril because
Right.
they can really get their nose out of joint, and rightly so. Nobody wants a surprise, even if it's a happy one, such as, can you read
Look
that?
at that
Look
swag.
at that. That came in
Oh,
Who's on the names on the other side of that mug? Oh,
mine. That's my
wait.
see
show
what
is
you can
Love
get
your
if you
swag.
participate in a summit. You're going to get swag that shows up. When did that come in today?
It came in this morning.
Well, there you go.
So
How's that?
brilliant
That's great.
timing. Thank you.
Is
Anyway,
that
back
from
to our
this?
topic.
Is
Laddering.
that from-
Laddering is kind of a flip side of secondment, and secondment isn't unique to large firms, although large firms can usually facilitate it better just because they've got more bodies. But in fact, I was talking about this morning with a cohort from Australia, because somebody with a recruiting firm, an international recruiting firm, had said that secondment was on its way out. I disagree with that heartily because smart firms will second their best and brightest into a key client to enable an anchoring of that talent into their key client. It is a win-win strategy. The client secures their top the law firm's client secures top talent without having to go out and look for it themselves. The talent secures usually a plum position within the legal department, and the firm secures an exclusive bridge to the client, as well as their former talent, and as a result gets first preference for new files. So that kind of secondment is pure gold. The flip side to that is the laddering concept. And laddering, if you think of it, is like a stairway or an escalator where you've got, let's say you've got people at the legal department and people at the law firm, and you've got, let's say, talent at the 5-year out level and the 10-year out level and the 15-year out level and the 20, and then you've got the seniors, say, at 25. And at 25 years out, you should be a senior partner probably, and probably a GC at the in-house. So as people progress and come up together, they know each other. There is commonality in terms of their cohort, their understanding, their experience, and these people can rise up together. It doesn't mean that it is a forever thing. If one of those rungs on the ladder, say on the law firm side or the legal department side, happens to depart, then the people on the upper rung and the lower rung can fill in, or you know what you've got to get as a lateral talent to plug in at whatever level in the firm or on the law department client. So that is how laddering works. When it comes to smaller firms, it's not quite as easy, and I will recognize that. However, it still can be a shortened version of the ladder, and it can work depending, it's just a matter of scale. That's what it is.
There's one
Michaela,
real issue though that we're seeing.
Michaela, when you check your mail, your mug will be waiting for you, so don't worry.
I just saw
all
a
our
little
all our
message there.
presenters
I got
today
so
are
sad.
gonna get one. So
Okay.
sorry, I just want to let you know,
So
don't panic. But go ahead.
no,
What were
that's
you
so
saying?
sweet. I was only teasing, but thank you. But you know what we're seeing also that's been like an impediment to succession planning is senior partners hoarding files and clients,
Oh
and
yeah.
to the detriment of the firm. And it's unbelievable. And that kind of, with their cohort laddering, you end up with a real problem because they're hounding the clients. They're not bringing the associates up to speed. And that could also be the demise of a firm if they're just not on board. They're not a
They're
team
not
player.
they're not running a good business. We heard Steve
Oh,
Benmore saying the more you delegate, the more profit you're going to make. If you're hanging on to these files, you're doing so to the detriment of your firm.
Right.
yeah.
And
And
it's
to the
all
client.
about the billable hour. People want to, keep their billable hours up. Well, you know what? There's pluses and minuses to that. And the minus to that is the good talent's going to depart. And that's what I was talking about in the first place about,
But you're not delivering value to your client. Why
right.
do you need to hang on to that file when there's a junior lawyer, paralegal, law clerk, do the work for a fraction of the cost, and you take on more
Because of
clients?
the billable hours, to get your hours up.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeing. They're just, it's sort of, I don't have to go out business develop. I have it here. I'm going to mine the clients I already have rather than go and develop further. It's like, I've got another 5, 8 years. I'm just going to ride it till the end. And they're not thinking about the succession of the firm. Whereas in the
I'm
smaller
gonna
firm,
I,
they're just tied to
I'm gonna
you.
push back on you two for a moment, and I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
The smaller firms, if you're a divorce lawyer, family lawyer, you might have the client 6 months if you settle by way of agreement outside the court. It might be 2 years if it goes into litigation, and then you got a whole new set of clients coming in. So terms of these institutional clients, I'm not sure if the handoff is that important to this specific area of law. But I think what would be more important would be the network and the referral sources where these new clients are being fed in. That's what's really been developed over a family law practitioner's career for 20, 30, 40 years. And that's really, I think, the sweet spot in terms of a transition. You want to keep feeding this machine. It's not that one client who may or may not get divorced again. You may do some work in the future in terms of a variation or something of that sort, or a parenting change. But would the network and the source of the clients be as important, or maybe even more important? What would you say, Heather?
It always is. I mean, you're only as good as your network. It is what it comes down to, and you know that, Russell. It really is. It's who you know, who are going to support you. It's an important factor, and don't ignore it. Please don't ignore it. And again, with AI and pricing coming into the picture, that network is going to be even more important. It's going to be vital because we all deal with, it's a people business. And as long as law is a people business, then that is your toehold. And that is the most important part about what you provide. It's not the stuff that you do. It's that you have an ability to listen and be empathetic and to counsel and provide judgment. Artificial intelligence is well named. It's artificial. It doesn't have a heart.
Right.
And until it does, people still have an inside track.
I suppose that's where the strength of a handover model would come into play, right? You're also handing over these networks, these referral sources. Michaela, what's your take on this? My little pushback. Sorry to throw you guys a bit of a loop, but
On your little
networks,
pushback,
new clients, do you agree with that analysis, or
100%. Yeah, I think it is the value of your network. What do they say? Your network is greatly, more so than your network is equal to your net worth. And I think, yeah, even with the institutional clients, you're seeing there's always one person who's the point person. And if you don't resonate with them, go across the street. You can get a cheaper price, a cheaper value. You can get a fee for service. There's always something else out there that looks more, if you don't have that connection. And again, I think, like you said, especially with family law firms, it isn't repeat business, right? So it's
right?
not, can't just rely on.
Well, there are clients that get divorced 2, 3 times. It's just not as big of a repeat business as a widget company or whatever.
Right.
But that's very insightful. Thank you, Michaela. So what about choosing the right successor? What should we be looking at? What are some of the things we want to consider? Heather, you want to take a crack at this one?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at that one. Again, it goes back to having the client involved, because the client has a voice here and the client needs to be heard. To have a replacement for a lawyer who is pulling back, the replacement for that lawyer doesn't necessarily need to be the person with the whitest hair. One reason for that is you might be handing off, a 65-year-old might be handing off to a 63-year-old. Well, what's the difference? So you need to consider the next rung down, and this goes back to my laddering, example, to be looking at the next rung down, and to figure out who the best match is going to be to the
how
client.
far
The
down that
client is
ladder?
going to help you.
How far down that ladder do you go?
Maybe 10 years, maybe 15. And but the client will help you. If you ask your client and say, I'm Heather Suttie, I'm going to be retiring in the next 5 years. I need to look ahead at who would be best for you. I'm looking at this person, and this person. How about we all sit down and meet together and you tell me what you think is going to work best for you, especially since from a corporate position, not from a family law position, but from a corporate position, where you think your business is going to go and what kind of talent you're going to need, because the client will know their situation better than you ever will, with all due respect.
That's why succession planning it's so important, succession planning, that you have that active pipeline, because you can't necessarily go down a few rungs if your 3 to 5 year pool is no longer there. So then, that becomes an issue. That's why planning in advance is so important, that you always have a good pipeline at the mid-level, at the more senior level. But Heather's right. It's not who has the whitest hair. You're just going to end up in the same position, or even seniority. Again, it goes back to client and lawyer alignment. And like Heather said, you have to get them involved to some extent, but also, you have to be careful that you're not giving everything away before you're ready to wind down. So a lot of when we're doing mergers and firm sales, we discuss it with the person who wants to do the succession and do the merger. And then at a certain point, we're like, you know what, I've really wrapped my head around this. I want to go forward. I'm going to talk to my clients now. Because again, you
Yeah.
may not have a book to merge anymore. That could be it. If they're not on board, if they're not in line, again, does the billable targets line up? So again, so it's not the person who's the most senior. It's if they can do the work and if the values align. So there's just a few kind of subtle things that it's just not about. You can always find somebody to do the work, but is that client going to want to work with that lawyer? I think that's a huge thing as well. But I think you do see that when you're staffing files. You can see the ones that rise to the top and the ones where the client starts to, call the senior partner and say, "Oh, you're busy on this. Is Joe, down the hall available? He worked on that last acquisition with you. I really liked him." So you can kind of get a sense along the way. There's those little nuggets. But if you're hoarding those clients and you never get them involved, so it's a matter of, bringing those senior associates onto files to staff them, doing the delegation in advance. So when the time comes and you do approach the client and say, "Hey, you've worked with these three associates. I'm sort of winding down and getting more help on these files. Any preference?"
That's really where the power of a team comes in, right? When you're working as a team as opposed to these, solo practitioners that just happen to be in a firm together. It really makes the transition easier. In terms of what other industries can family lawyers look at, just to get a sense in terms of what other businesses would, how are they doing, approaching succession? Do you have an industry that would line up closely with
To
us,
model
or
after,
yeah,
I see a lot with accounting firms.
is that right?
There's
Okay.
small mom and pop shop accounting firms. I guess it is different in the sense that it may not be like a one-off transaction. There's usually more to it. But we find those service industries are very similar. I don't know. What do you
Heather, do
think,
you
Heather?
agree with that?
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about it, except for lately. I would look at the medical industry. I would look at doctors who are starting to retire. My doctor is going to start to retire, and I've asked her about succession, and she says she's going to keep practicing until 5 years after she's dead. Well,
I know
Isn't it
some
all
lawyers
you?
that may be dead right now and
does
they're
that
still
sound familiar? Yeah.
practicing law.
Yeah. So you know what? I've taken the initiative and I've gone on to a new doctor because I can't wait. And so I
What was
have to
that
move
movie
ahead.
called? The Fifth Sense, The Sixth Sense,
Pardon?
with Bruce Willis. There's a whole movie about that. He was already dead half through the movie. You figure it out,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah,
That's true.
no, that was pretty insightful. All right, so we actually have had poll results go up and down. We're going to get to the poll results in a moment, but I want to thank everybody who continue to participate. Overcoming barriers. Michaela, obviously procrastination is a big one. I'm hearing you say 1 to 3 years would be quick. What are the barriers family lawyers need to start thinking about and breaking through?
Not having a plan and wrapping your head around the idea. I think, well, the first one is wrapping your head around the idea. I think that's the biggest impediment. It's just, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to think about it. Now's not the time. I'm too busy. My clients need this. I'm going away this weekend. It's just saying, facing it that you need to have the plan. It's like losing weight. I want to lose 10 pounds. Well, it's daunting when you think of the 10 pounds all in one go. But if you think, okay, my goal is I'm going to lose the 10 pounds, let's work backwards from that. Can I lose a pound a week? Can I do it in this time frame? Can I, and it's just working backwards. So it's like just get your head around it. It's something you have to do. Build it in like you would business development. Don't watch Netflix for an hour that night. Instead, do an hour of just thinking about, okay, what if in 3 years, I don't want to be doing this anymore. And then it just makes it so much more manageable to have a plan or to even start to think about it. Think about those options. Do I want to merge with another firm? Do I just want to wind down and call it a day? Do I want to have a successor? Do I have a successor? Or do I want to sell it? And, like you could just categorize it and then pick one and start to just fraction it out.
Well, that old saying, what gets measured gets managed, right? But we're not measuring this. Audience question came in. Thank you for submitting it. Around what stage of life should a lawyer plan succession and eventually exit practice? So I guess I'm not sure what they mean by stage, but maybe age or years a, or I don't know, maybe stage. How would you guys approach that question? Heather, you want to take a kick at that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody is different. And I'm not ducking the question. There's my doctor who's, who's 71 and going to practice until 5 years after she's dead. Well, I don't think that's going to happen. But she's practicing at 71.
Why would lawyers retire? We've got a great job. Most of us love what we're doing. Like the mindset is, what am I going to do if I retire?
Well,
right?
But this is it. It's the stuff that comes after that can create the fear or the concern. I mean, you can't, well, you might be able to, Russell, spend every day on the golf course. But because I know you like that on Fridays, if I remember correctly. But everybody's going to be different in what they want to do afterward. But the thing is, you need to, as Michelle mentioned, you need to plan for this, but you also need to action it, and you need to tell people about it. You cannot do succession planning in your head. It's got to come out of your mouth. It's got to come in the actions. It's got to bring people along so that nobody is surprised when you decide that you're going to step back. Nobody wants a surprise, and that's the key part of succession planning as far as I'm concerned.
So stage, 15, 20 years out, 20 years into practice. If you had to put a number on it, is there a sweet spot that you're seeing?
That's a good question. I would give like a good 5-year runway to really get the wheels in motion. I'm assuming this person is probably in a smaller firm just by the demographic from the poll.
Mhm.
In the larger firm, you just do have to be cognizant. What we're seeing a lot of now is the mandatory retirement. And what's ironic is it's 65, which is the new 35. So it's when people don't have family obligations like they used to because their kids are either grown up out of the house, mortgages are either paid down or significantly reduced, and your expertise is in high. You were at the pinnacle of your career and you have about 15 years left, and suddenly they're saying you're out. So we're helping a lot of succession planning with those people. What's my next step? But if this person is talking about a smaller firm, like it's really 5 years to like identifying a firm is hard, identifying a successor, so it's just starting to, put out the feelers, wrap your head around, see who's doing what, see what values align, what practices align, going to networking events, just in case. Because if you're the only person and it's falling on you and that's your only source of income, it can be very scary if you don't have a plan, whether it's just straight retiring or if something actually happens, you need to have some sort of next step. So I'd say
Maybe I'm being naive. Who's telling people to retire at 65?
the mandatory retirement is 65 to 70 in the large firms. That's the age.
Really?
If they've got a program in place, if that's part of the partnership agreement, and that does
So
not
the partners are kicking them out.
Oh, I know. I can think of 5 senior partners right now in Vancouver who had to start their own thing, and they're killing it
Yeah.
now. But
Well, their
just
lifestyle is going to change, right? Their income's going to drop significantly.
but they're going to have more time.
Pardon me?
But they're going to have more time. You either pay
They're not going to know what to do with
more
themselves.
time or more money.
right.
Yes.
And they're just at the peak of their career. These are the guys you want on, not the
Right.
person where they're trying to pay for kids' schools and have to leave the office at 4:30. And it's like it's just interesting. It's just an archaic policy that they're trying to switch over. It's almost like in violation of the Human Rights Code, but
I've got our poll results, and I think I'm going to start ringing the fire alarm here. Where are you in your succession planning? I don't have one, 44%. Well, I have one, that's good, 30%. I'm only thinking about it due to this program, 25%. I have one and everyone knows about it, 0%. That's scary. But we're 70%. people haven't even turned their minds. Our audience here today haven't thought about this. So
Think about it.
actions.
You'll thank yourself later.
Yeah, you will. That's
You
the
really
first step,
will.
is thinking about it, just wrapping your head around it.
Will.
The rest will fall into place.
Well, like I said, this is a great bookend to today's program because we don't think about this until it's too late, or we're injured or incapable of making these decisions for whatever reason. Action steps. Now that we know that there's certainly a demand for this, right? This is a blind spot. We're identifying this for everybody today. Our audience is agreeing with us. 70% of our audience is saying this is a huge blind spot. They haven't turned their minds to them. So action steps. Let's start with Michaela. What should we be doing when we log off and go get our cup of coffee or glass of wine or whatever people are doing tonight?
Is just thinking, where do I see this going? Am I just going to wrap it up and walk away? Or do I want to go from lawyer to legacy? Do I want this to continue, whether or not I'm at the helm? And then taking it from there. So if you do, then you've got to identify a potential successor, a potential law firm to merge with, a potential purchaser. If you don't, then it's the other things. It's more regulatory. It's, I'm going to wind down. I've got to let my clients know. I've got to make sure that somebody's there for me to transition them to. So just methodical. The other thing is, if you don't want to deal with any of this because you just want a lawyer, that's where we come in. You know, Life After Law is starting a whole succession planning sort of offshoot, because it used to be Life After Law. Like, what do I do? I'm in private practice. I'm in my 5th year. I'm disgruntled. Maybe I should go into in-house. Now it's, I'm 65. I'm at the peak of my career. I can't stay at this firm any longer because of a policy, or somebody just having their own firm saying, I don't want to do this. I want to be on the golf course every Thursday and Friday. So it's sort of, how do I pivot now? I've done the same thing for 30 years. So I think there's two sort of things. It's, do I do it myself? And if I do, okay, can I look for a successor? Can I look for somebody to purchase? Can I look for a merger? Or do I want to outsource this? Who am I going to bring in to help me get through this so I can just keep lawyering, but I'm not shooting myself in the foot?
I'm writing this down. I was at we have the smaller law associations have annual AGMs with a dinner and awards presentation. They're really quite nice. And it's the second time I've seen this. A lawyer received the certificate for 50 years at the bar, still practicing. So I'm going to say these numbers, 15, 25, 50 years out, there's lawyers out there doing it. We're going to wind this program up in 5-10 minutes. What should I be writing down as an action step tonight? And what should I be doing in the next 30 days? Maybe 2-3 takeaways of things to put down on a piece of paper, put it in your calendar, and take some action. So, Heather, you want to start with that, and then we'll flip that back over to Michaela?
Sure.
And any additional steps you're recommending?
Well, yeah, Michelle has said about, thinking about it. And yeah, you absolutely have to, because if you don't think about it, it's never going to happen. So you've actually got to think about it, and then you've got to do something. And what I always suggest is that if you write it down, it becomes a little more real. As I said, you can't do succession planning in your head. You need to get it out, and you need to either get it on paper or talk to somebody about it. Talk to someone who has been through this. There are people who have been on this road ahead of you. Find people who you respect and find out how they did it. And you can take little bits of what they did and apply it to what you do. I can tell you right now that I am doing a lot of work in this area. I am also going through my own succession. And I have determined, I started this 5 years ago myself. What do I want at a certain point in my life? And I want to do not as much consulting work, but more advisory work. A lawyer can do the same sort of thing. I'm going to shift into advisory. I want to spend more time doing pro bono work. I know what I'm going to do because I've plotted it out. And because I've plotted it out and I've got a map, it makes me feel a little more secure, because then I can apply a budget to that, a timeline to that, And everybody who knows me knows what I'm going to do. So there's not going to be any surprises, including, a surprise from a client.
Yeah, and the legal profession has a great tradition of mentorship, right from articles through. So if you know somebody who's retired, talk to them about it, find out what went right, what went wrong. I really like your idea, Heather, not just writing it down, but telling somebody about it. I think statistically, when you talk about goals or your vision and you verbalize it and discuss it or create a vision board, it's much more effective. Michelle, I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
No,
But
I get it all the time. Look how it's spelled. I don't even know how to pronounce it.
so action steps. What are you recommending for tonight and next 30 days? What should some good baby steps we should be taking?
I love what Heather said. Look at somebody else who you look up to or has a similar practice, whether you know them or not. I feel like people are so inclined to help. You pick up the phone, you shoot an email saying, just want to pick your brain. I've noticed that you've done this. But like action steps, really deciding, like in 5 to 10 years, where do I see myself? If, God forbid, something happened and I couldn't practice again and still had to pay my bills, what would I do? I think when you've identified what is it where attention goes, intention flows, or like you always have to have that thing first to be able to put the attention to it and make it manifest it into reality. So I think it's really important tonight. I would sit down, where do I see myself in 5, 10 years? And then you can say, how do I get there? You can't just say, I want to go to Buffalo and hop in the car. You get out the map or you get out Google Maps. You first establish the destination, then get in the car and go. But if you're just going to go aimlessly, you're never going to get to where you want to be. So you just write it out, two possibilities, and then start to action it. Okay, well, I really think I'm going to, again, it comes down to winding down or whether I want a merger. And then see, like what Heather said, who's done that? Who has successfully sold their practice? And
Yeah.
don't reinvent the wheel. Tell them, say, what did you do? I don't know where to start. And right there, you'll get, oh, talk to this person or this person. Oh, I just spoke to my friend who I graduated law school with 30 years ago. They're looking for the same thing. And before you know it, the wheels will turn. You'll be ignited again for the next stage, because there is a life after law. There is something after, if you've got those things in place. It doesn't have to be, again, lawyer to legacy. Like you could ride this out, but get that action plan in place, start those small baby steps, and the rest sort of flows from there.
I've got my notes. I've been
Yeah,
making notes. This has been fantastic. I've actually had a senior lawyer reach out to me saying, it's time for me to merge my firm.
Yeah,
this is fantastic just from this event. So that was
that's amazing.
fantastic.
Heather and I, like, I'm happy to discuss anytime they can reach out. That's what we do.
I was going to
So
suggest call one of you two, right?
Sure.
You guys, this is
why not?
your,
Happy to help.
We've done it.
yeah.
This is what we're in the business of. We're happy to guide anyone through. So
I've read your work. I think you guys are providing great value to the profession, and I deeply appreciate you bringing this to our attention. This is a huge blind spot that 80% of this audience is obviously hasn't thought about or taken any action on. We're going to wrap up quickly, though. I'll give final comments first to Heather.
I really don't have anything further to say that I haven't said already, Russell. I would just be repeating myself. But if you'll indulge me, I would like to thank the good folks who organized this event today, by name Daphne Brooks and Nicole Dortono, and the team of technical wizards. I know you're there, and the admin support, as well as to Michelle, whose picture we see there, and of course to you, Russell. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time and your skills and your talent and your care. You've made this a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Heather. Michelle?
how can I go after that? I'm
Okay.
just going to piggyback on that. Thank you. No, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I feel honored to be amongst this sophisticated panel. And I just hope that, we could impart some wisdom. But again, like we just said, we're here if you want to call, email, LinkedIn, if there's any questions that you have that's come out of today, happy to answer it further.
Yeah, and I want to thank our audience for joining us on Zoom and on YouTube. We've had a great turnout today. If you want to learn more about this subject, we're going to have more in the show notes.